Hello, hello. Today we have an annual video, what I like to call our heaven versus hell graph, looking at the fantasy schedules from the first half of the season to the second half of the season, weeks 9 to 17. Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? We're looking at that y-axis on the left. It is the first half strength of schedule for fantasy football, and then comparing it to the second half on the bottom there. So we look at the bottom right. That is the main section of the graph, maybe the most important section of the graph, your process buys, where it's going to get better going forward. Maybe they haven't been the best so far, but at least better matchups are ahead. We'll start with Chase Brown, the only guy that is going from 32nd to 1st in terms of having the best schedule the rest of the way. It's looking better, but should we be confident? I will say I'll preach caution more on this one. Going against the graph a little bit more just to start off the video. The Buffalo matchup and the Baltimore matchup 2 different times is what scares me, because although they aren't the greatest against running backs on the ground, they are really good teams, at least once Lamar is back. So that is adjusting it a little bit there, because the Bengals just lost to the 0-6 Jets. I don't have too much confidence in these games being closer and them taking advantage of a good rushing matchup. The really good one is Miami, because over these next few weeks, it actually kind of continues being bad. It's just the end of the year stretch looks amazing on paper. But the one that I'm happy about, excited about, would be that Miami matchup. The other ones, not as much. So I would just preach caution there. Where I think it's better for the Bengals is the receivers, who have been more middle of the road, but as you see, the rest of the way, they're about fourth in terms of having the fourth best schedule remaining. So the stretch, just incredible when you're taking into account that game script too. It is Chicago, then Pittsburgh. New England's a tougher one, but still, because of that game script, not bad, especially on paper from what we've seen so far without Christian Gonzalez in some of those games. Then we got Baltimore, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami, and Arizona. There is zero bad matchups in there. The only one is that Patriots matchup, which on paper is still a positive one for receivers, and I would say they're probably going to be playing catch up, so it could be fine there. So in terms of Higgins doing something, but especially Jamar Chase, if Flacco can keep this going even to an extent, they'll have really good matchups remaining. So that's really good for them. The Minnesota receivers are the ones that I would say I'm most happy about with this graph. If JJ McCarthy can be good, really just be good. He doesn't have to be great, doesn't have to be amazing. If he can just be solid, he has the number one strength of schedule the rest of the way in terms of being a good thing, the best strength of schedule. Minnesota can benefit from that. They have number one in terms of receivers after having a really hard stretch to start the year. So they're just in this gold zone right now. Jefferson already has some positive touchdown regression coming, should have some more touchdowns. They can't really run the ball, and there's not really a single bad matchup remaining. Their hardest one in terms of being an entire team is that Green Bay matchup. But against outside receivers, Addison, Jefferson, it's not that bad. So really, Jefferson, Addison, for the rest of the year, if McCarthy can come in and be solid, they're set up extremely well. Waddle kind of similar there. Tua, a lot depends on him, but looked really good last week against a really hard matchup, has had really hard matches throughout the year, and we're looking at his schedule. It does look a lot better. He's got Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay in the playoffs. That's awesome, especially those last two being at home, which is important because you want to be in Miami when it gets to December when you have Tua Tagovailoa. So I like Waddle there too. London looks fine. Dart is another one that looks really good. The easiest matchups for the Giants were when he wasn't playing, so I didn't include those ones. That makes his schedule so far 32nd, and he's been great with the hardest quarterback schedule, and now right inside that top 10. So it gives me a little bit more confidence with Dart. A guy that actually is affected a lot by his schedule, I would say, would be Quinshon Judkins. Another one where I'm looking similar to Chase Brown, but it's more positive. Are they playing teams where they can keep it close? And the answer is yes, for the most part. There's going to be some games in there where it's not good, but when you're trying to choose those games, when to play Judkins, they get the Jets next. That's nice. They get the Raiders, Tennessee, Chicago, Pittsburgh in that divisional game maybe stays close. We've seen that once before already. So overall, the schedule for Judkins I really like there. And real quick, before we go to the heaven part of the graph, Derrick Henry, one of the worst schedules so far. Rest of the way, it's average, which for him, we'll take right now. Miami's a great matchup on Thursday Night Football, so maybe it starts to turn around there. I personally think so. Let's get to the Evan part though. Nico Collins, a big one because of the Surtain injury. His schedule the rest of the way stays amazing. So he hasn't been the greatest. The volume hasn't been the greatest, but hopefully he can start to turn around. A big portion of that, though, is that Denver matchup is so bad. But when you adjust it for Surtain being out, he's not going to be shadowed by him anymore. Well, the schedule for the rest of the year looks really good. So maybe he starts to turn it around. I certainly hope so. The Eagles receivers in a similar spot. They've been turning it around, and that schedule stays really good. So it gets me a little bit more confident in them. Omarion Hampton, like the other guys that have missed some games, this is based on the games that he has played in. So those first 4 games of the year, those last 2 that he's incredible in, he had the 8th easiest schedule, eighth easiest schedule, and he has the 8th easiest schedule for the rest of the way. So that's really good for Hampton in a spot where he can come back with a healthier offensive line. Hopefully Vidal isn't eating too much into that work. If he can get 75% of the touches, that's going to be plenty in my opinion. Caleb Williams on the edge of this green. I would say he's maybe in a sell high spot after next week because they play Cincinnati this week. He's been a little bit more match dependent, I would say. 4 touchdowns versus Dallas, 5 versus everybody else. Not the greatest sign. He's had a really good schedule to start the year. Now he has the 12th easiest remaining schedule, but a lot of that is Cincinnati in week 9. So after that Cincinnati game, it kind of goes to the below average mark, which makes me a little bit scared. Some other guys in this section that is good for: Jayden Daniels gets Dallas in that championship game. Lamar, similar spot right there. Jordan Mason, his is very extreme going forward, either really bad matchups or really good matchups. So kind of for like that flex start sit decision, that's not a really bad thing. It's kind of nice sometimes to have those extremes. Know when to sit him, know when to bench him. Week 15, that first round of the playoffs, he gets Dallas too, so that can be nice as well. Moving to the harder matchups ahead, this is the process sells, I would say. Guys that have really good schedules to start the year. Going forward, it's pretty bad. And as you see, the guy that's the number 1 up in this top left is Jonathan Taylor. And I take back everything I just said about being a process sell because, yeah, process would say it. But let's look beyond a little bit. Jonathan Taylor, he's perfect. He's averaging like 28 points per game right now. If you took away 8 touchdowns, you take away a touchdown per game from his season, he's averaging 21 points per game. He's fine. So yes, he's probably not going to be averaging 28 points per game going forward. Maybe if someone's offering a trade of 28 points per game value, maybe, but I'm not saying to sell Jonathan Taylor because of his schedule. It does get really hard, I will say, but at the same time, those last 4 weeks of the fantasy schedule, he gets Jacksonville twice, which on paper is a negative matchup. I do not think it is necessarily a negative matchup for Jonathan Taylor in this Colts defense. I'm guessing they score in the 30s and the 40s like they have been in that divisional matchup. He's been great against them in the past. So overall, my take is I don't care about the schedule part. Others, yeah. Dobbins, it's really tough. He's more so schedule dependent because of his play style and everything. He's not really getting much receiving. His good games is when he scores touchdowns. His bad games are when he doesn't score touchdowns. So he's got some games. He's got the Raiders twice, which is really nice. Outside of that, a little bit scary. That first game in the playoffs for fantasy is going to be against Green Bay. That's like the worst matchup of his entire season, and it's game 1 of the playoffs. So that's tough. When we're looking at Sutton and Knicks, I'm a little bit more confident in Sutton. He does have some games, like he's going to get McDuffie twice, Stingley next week, which he hasn't been shadowing consistently. I don't know why. He like sort of complained about it, but maybe a little bit better of a matchup than most. But still, like Texans in general aren't a great matchup. So Sutton will have his week still, but a little harder schedule going forward. Knicks, rough until the bye. And then after that late bye, it's more so average. So not the end of the world for a guy that you're probably not starting every single week. You can avoid starting him maybe in some of those tougher games. Kyren, his playoff schedule is Detroit, Seattle, and Atlanta. So I will say he goes as the team goes. And in general, I trust the Rams. I think he'll be more okay. But that playoff schedule is really tough. So hopefully he can just hold off Corum there, get some of that touchdown luck, get the goal line work, because that is when, like, that's how he's going to be good against these teams like Seattle. Great run defense. We saw a few weeks ago Rashad White was really good against them because of receiving and the goal line carries. So that's kind of what you're hoping for is maybe his rushing yard total isn't going to be as good against Seattle, but can he get that valuable work in terms of fantasy football still? Mahomes, in terms of looking at the meta with it, like I guess he's a sell high after week 13, I would say, but similar to Taylor, he's been so good, it's hard to trade him. He has Dallas in week 13. Pretty good schedule overall up until week 14, with week 13 being the big peak. And then after that, he gets Houston, the Chargers, who, he plays well against, but it's a little bit different now. They have not been scoring what they usually do ever since Jim Harbaugh came to town. Then they get Tennessee, which for fantasy isn't the greatest, and then Denver and the fantasy championship game. So those last 4 games are pretty tough for Mahomes. Maybe won't be the overall quarterback one in those 4 games. And sadly, it sucks to see over here. Robinson's had an average schedule so far, Bijan, and the rest of the way, he has the worst schedule. So, more so like Taylor, he's been incredible. His floor has been amazing, but really, he only has one positive matchup remaining out of the 9, and that is Arizona in week 16. So, good spot to have it. But for Atlanta specifically, I think it is a little bit better than 32nd, maybe. He's got the Patriots and the Colts the next 2 weeks. Not good, not good. Maybe a buy low if someone is, for some reason, selling them in 2 weeks after the Patriots and the Colts defense. After that, though, because a lot of these matchups on paper maybe aren't the greatest for fantasy running backs, but it's Carolina, the Saints, and the Jets. And for Atlanta, who is not doing the greatest in terms of the offense, maybe they're in good game scripts there, closer games, giving him a lot of usage against those teams where on paper they're good against fantasy running backs, but I wouldn't be scared to play Bijan, obviously, against those guys. And moving down to hell, who has had horrible matchups so far, and the rest of the way, it's still going to be horrible. Kenneth Walker, not a shock, given how he's going this year. It is one of those where it's a process, sell low. I don't mind it. If anybody wants Walker as a throw-in, you're trading a 2-for-1, whatever it is, they're desperate for just available players. Walker, the end of the year, his last 5 matchups are brutal, especially just on the ground. He's not getting anything in the air. He's not getting goal line work. So you're just banking on those explosive plays or those big time rushes. And those last 5 games, I wouldn't count on many. I wouldn't count on many. Oh, I'm so sad. We're looking at the Colts, though. Similar to Taylor, it's not the greatest the rest of the way, but it isn't horrible because, again, Jacksonville twice in those last 4 games. Pittsburgh, really good matchup this week for Daniel Jones and Michael Pittman. Then it's a rough stretch, but I would say the fantasy playoffs are fine, average. So I would say it's okay there. Egbuka and Mayfield, it's a little bit annoying, but they have been great up until this point with that hard schedule. So I don't think it's going to be anything different overall. Dallas receivers, again, wouldn't panic at least. Last week, Dak Prescott had one of his worst games. He had 188 yards and 0 touchdowns, and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens each had 14 points. So, still like them. Jacksonville receivers, it isn't great, but at least they're not 32nd anymore. So they were 32nd or 31st. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be the one that has the much harder matchup. A lot of those outside wide receiver shadows. So Hunter in the slot, average matchups the rest of the way, and better of the 2 when you're comparing him to Brian Thomas Jr. So a little bit better there. Pollard, another one, sell low, I guess, or drop candidate down the line. Trevor Lawrence, not too much hope there. Some of these other guys, but like CMC, Bucky Irving, like I'm still fine with, because if they've been playing well up until this point, they're probably going to keep playing well against these tougher matchups. So not overly worried there. But yeah, full graph will zoom back out for you. This is everything. If you're looking for guys in the middle, it is more so, have they been playing well? They'll probably continue to play well. Have they been playing bad? They're probably going to continue playing bad based on the schedules. But this is everything. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon.